How did your bachelor's or master's look like?
My master's, I had good grades, but in the bachelor's, it was probably a bit more average. Partied a bit too hard, perhaps. But I'm very happy that they were assigned to me because my main supervisor is the coolest person, I think, at the department.
Okay. Yeah.
Hopefully she sees this.
Like,
If you are interested to do PhD in Denmark, or if you are just curious about what PhD is in general, then you have clicked on the right video. Today I'm going to interview Jonathan, who is working as a PhD researcher at Aarhus University. We're going to talk about how he got into academia in the first place, what kind of student was he when he was a bachelor's, and also what kind of things can you expect when you're doing PhD. We'll also talk into the financials, and we will give you a bit of an idea of what a daily life of a researcher looks like. Please enjoy and make sure to subscribe to not miss any of these future videos.
Jonathan, maybe you could simply introduce yourself and tell us what university you are working for and what it is that you are researching.
Yeah, well, I'm a PhD student at Aarhus University, Department of Management. I studied my bachelor's and master's also at Aarhus University. And now I'm sitting in a small center at the department doing research on organizational design, where I'm specifically doing research on the gig economy, independent work, the future of work. Yeah.
Freelancing for
Yeah.
those. Yeah. So maybe for our viewers who are just about to start bachelor's or maybe master's, the whole concept of PhD might be extremely abstract. I know that it was for me just only a few months ago or a few years ago maybe. So how would you explain in your own terms, like what is PhD and how would you compare it to bachelor's or master's studies?
It's a good question. I would say it's a lot less about finding out what you want to do and more a career choice. So it's more about, finding out whether you want to be in academia as a career. Whereas in the bachelor, you're networking with your classmates, you're learning different subjects that are drawing on all sorts of theories or theoretical areas for that matter. You're doing a student job and figuring out, what you're going to study in your master's and what you're going to do afterwards. And then in the PhD, you kind of have a very specific focus on one area that you're interested in, and you learn a lot more about theories related to that area. So for me, in a broad sense, but still quite specific, it's management. And more specifically, there's a whole literature on organizational design and independent work.
Was your PhD something that you were interested during your bachelor's or master's about?
No, I think it usually is for a lot of PhDs, but in my case, it wasn't something that I had planned on doing until I thought about, we can say that I thought about doing it when I started the master's.
Who inspired you the most to get on this academic journey?
Probably myself.
Okay.
But I mean, I was always pretty uncertain. I guess I still am a little bit, but I think that the topic that I was researching was something that I was very interested in because I've done temporary work myself, and I was interested in furthering our understanding of why it exists and how temporary workers or independent workers and firms interact with each other, how it benefits firms and how it benefits workers, and how it can be improved. And then I stumbled upon a student job for a firm that recruits high skill freelancers, IT consultants, and I did some work as a business analyst for them. That turned out to be very useful, and I discovered that there was a lot we didn't really know about this area of management and business that is really growing very fast. I mean, independent workers or freelancers are the fastest growing employment sector in the economy. That kind of inspired me to continue to learn more about it and about what academia had to say, and about whether I could contribute with some insights of my own.
Was this solely your decision, or was there some influence from the company as well?
So my boss wanted me to do a PhD. He encouraged me to do it a lot. He offered to do a partnership so that I could do an industrial PhD, which is a bit different. It's a bit longer and you work for both the firm and the university, but I declined because I wanted to be more independent in my work.
So are you
Yeah,
working mostly with university or with a company?
I'm solely employed by the university. So I declined the industrial PhD, which would have been 5 years, and I did a 3-year PhD with the university. But of course, I am working with the company to collect data and stuff. It's just in an industrial PhD, you're actually part-time employed by the company, and they have, because they're paying for some of your PhD, they have more say in what you can research. They have a little more influence.
Yeah, so essentially, if you want to do PhD, there are two paths that you can choose, right? It's the one that you get selected by the university to be in the PhD program, and then it's your company or some institution paying for you for doing the PhD.
Well, the university pays, or the government, Danish government pays for your PhD. Yeah, if you apply for a PhD that is not supported by industry, and the other path, as you rightfully say, is if you're working in a company and they would like you to research something that is important to the company, they offer to pay half of the PhD or more, let's say. And then you kind of employed by both the university and the company. So I'm only employed by the university.
All right, all right. So we have been juggling the word employed quite a lot. So it's for those people that are watching or listening right now, if they are thinking about PhD as a bachelor's degree, it's probably something very different, right? Like it's as being an employee by the university, and they're expecting some output from you that is actually relevant. Much different to bachelor's or master's when you can just hand in something and you sort of pass. Uh, do you feel this kind of pressure on yourself that you should be, contributing to the science on your daily basis, or, how would you say that the university is expecting you to deliver on what you're doing?
The pressure comes more from the competitive nature of academia. So if you want to stay in academia when you're done, you really have to, to learn a lot in a short period of time, and you have to do a lot in a short period of time. So publish papers or write the monograph, which is more of like a book that you write, or you can write 3 articles and try to publish them. But in order to get it to have a career in academia, you need to publish, and you need to make sure that your research is relevant and rigorous in terms of the methods that you use and the research design that you've created. So there is definitely a lot more pressure than when it's not studying a bachelor or master's in the same sense. It's more learning how to do research, just as you would learn how to be a data scientist in your first job or consultant. Yeah, but
So
of course, yeah, it's manageable.
yeah. So the PhD is as you said 3 years. So you could say that in those 3 years they're essentially training you to become a researcher, a scientist in your given field.
Yes.
What are your possibilities, or what are the next steps that you can take after you finish the PhD? Because I suppose it's not automatic that they will just hire you to be a scientist, right?
No, so if you're very competent and you publish some papers in some very top journals, then you can become an assistant professor, and you basically start a tenure track to become a full professor. So
Okay.
you start out as an assistant professor, and you have some goals that you have to meet in terms of publications and teaching. And then you can become an associate professor, where you also have some goals and a bit longer time before you can become a full professor. The other way, if you can't get an assistant professorship because academia is very competitive, there are a lot more PhDs than there are tenured positions, as we would call them. You can become a postdoc or a research assistant for some time after your PhD. Postdoc is where you work for a professor or you work on a research project for a year or two while publishing your own work on the side that you started in your PhD. And then hopefully once you are able to publish more of your own work and the work you do in the postdoc, you can reapply for an assistant professorship.
All right. So the natural transition is to be a professor if that happens, or be an assistant to a researcher. Or you can just flex because you have PhD right now. So that's also cool. Okay, so we've talked quite a lot about the PhD in itself. I believe that the viewers have a good idea of what PhD is. Maybe we could dig a bit into your background and what kind of a student you were, so we have some idea of what is the prerequisite to be a PhD student. So maybe could you tell us a bit about how did your bachelor's or master's look like? How was the group work that you were involved in, and what kind of grades were you getting?
Yeah, I don't think that I had I mean, okay, my master's, I had good grades, maybe in the top of my class, but in the bachelor's, it was probably a bit more average. Partied a bit too hard, perhaps. Group work was I think, yeah, interesting, both in the bachelor's and the master's. I had quite a few different groups, and in the master's, towards the end, I had a good group, and a few guys that I studied with a lot before the exams. But I wrote my thesis by myself, so it was not like, yeah, I was inspired a lot by my classmates to pursue an academic
Was the
career.
group also aspiring to be PhD researchers afterwards?
No, no one that I know from my classmates. Oh, one guy from my bachelor, he actually joined after me. He was a bit different. His trajectory was a bit different to mine, so he always wanted to do the PhD since his bachelor. And he actually is in the same center as I am now, but we didn't study the same masters.
Have you ever experienced a situation in your group where you were trying to push a lot, but the other people might be very demotivated in the studies? Have you ever encountered this situation?
Yeah, and I think that bothered me a bit in my bachelor, but in the masters, I realized it doesn't really affect your grade. So of course, it's annoying when you have to explain and keep re-explaining things to people. And I've had people tell me that, like people in my study group who said they just want to get a 2, that's their goal with the subject, and that's also a bit frustrating. But you learn to cope with it. I mean, that's like getting a job as well. You're going to meet people who are less driven than you, and you can't let it bring you down or make you too emotional.
And this is something we talked about last time when we were on our quick call, but you also mentioned that you are teaching some of the classes as a part of your PhD. This is mandatory, right?
Yes, so you have around 740 hours, I think it is, over 3 years that you have to do teaching activities. And that can be anything from supervising bachelor and master students to teaching tutorials to teaching guest lecturing. I've done some guest lecturing, I've done some tutorials. I've corrected some exams, helping out with study cafes. Yeah, it's good to have prior teaching experience, which I didn't have much of.
You learn by doing.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you see it in the classes that you were teaching? And by the way, how many classes did you teach, or did you teach like regular courses in uni?
Yeah, so I was pretty unlucky because I didn't teach beforehand. But all my teaching is kind of in the fall semester. So the fall semester, when I started, it was a bit too late to plan my teaching for that semester because it was already happening. So I planned for the next fall semester, which was last fall, and I ended up, yeah, putting a lot of my teaching hours there and doing it all over Zoom. So that was tough for sure. So it's a good idea to plan your teaching before you start the PhD as soon as you get the acceptance. Write to your supervisor or someone in the school and ask if they need help teaching.
We have talked about this a bit last time. You said that PhD is competitive, and I can imagine that AU it's extremely competitive. There are people from all around the world that want to get in because it is a good position to be in. I don't know if you want to touch briefly on the financials of doing a PhD in Denmark. What kind of salary can people expect?
Well, in general, doing a PhD is not very attractive. I mean, I wouldn't do it for the money.
Yeah,
if I had to do it again. I didn't do it for that. I mean, I knew I probably could have gotten a better starting salary, especially being a management student in industry. That's not why I did it. But it is very good in Denmark. The pay is a lot better than the rest of Europe. So I have a friend who's visiting from Italy and doing his PhD there, who's making just over €1,000 a month. And in Denmark, it's somewhere between 4,500, 4 and 5,000, I think, depending on seniority and which department you're in, I think.
What could be the strategy for people that are not in research yet? They're not doing PhD, but maybe they would be curious to see how it looks like when someone is doing a research. They would that might be interested in help someone in the research. What would be the best way to reach the researchers like you?
Well, there are job ads put up every now and then. I'm actually looking for a research assistant right now. Of course, the bar is a little higher on some of those job ads. So I need someone who's, for example, is good at coding in R and doing statistical analysis, has some experience with machine learning and nested models and stuff. I know it sounds very technical, the language right now, but there are, of course, other student jobs where it's a bit more simple. For example, helping with transcribing interviews, or so that's a great way to start. Look for, or becoming a course instructor, because yeah, learning to teach the material, you get a better grasp of the theoretical concepts and arguments. So that's also a good way. But of course, getting a student job, I would say, in your bachelor or master's, and being curious about problems that you see in industry, or in textbooks, things that you don't agree with, learning to question things. I think that's a great way to start. And then if you're really interested in something, because I wouldn't do a PhD unless I'm really interested in the phenomenon. Then talk to someone. So I talked to my supervisor during my master's, at the beginning of my master's, as soon as I got the student job, and said, I have this problem that I'm researching for the firm, and be nice if I can already start sparring with you. Yeah, the first semester of my master's, because I'm also planning on doing my internship. So I was a bit strategic in that sense, and I wasn't sure that I would do the PhD. I was doing research, you could call it, during my master's.
Was there something, some activity that you were doing on a daily basis that you might be able to contribute to this, the fact that you are on PhD right now, or something that has helped you now that you're on PhD? What comes to my mind is like mapping literature from day one when you got to university, or managing your EndNote library or something like that. Is there something specific that you were doing from the very beginning?
From the beginning of my PhD, or the beginning of my,
I would say master's
studies?
or bachelor's.
Yeah, so it's always good to get experience with writing and building arguments. I've always liked writing. I guess that's why I thought the PhD might be a great opportunity for me. So yeah, definitely writing is journaling, just writing essays, writing blogs, writing comments on LinkedIn, wherever you can get a chance. I think, but I think it's an important exercise, because you really have to think about whether what you're saying makes sense. And
of course.
if you're commenting on a post, especially where you're challenging what the original poster has said, or you're adding something to it, it's a good exercise in theorizing, you could almost say, because you have to build an argument that makes sense.
Precisely. And LinkedIn is a very good place actually also to look for academia and things like connected with companies and PhDs, because these things are usually not on Facebook, because people that are on Facebook are not PhD students usually. That is the case.
Yeah, but I mean, you can still theorize on Facebook. And I know there are a lot of theories out there.
But I bet
maybe
you
maybe more related to political science. But
I think 99% of those people do not have a PhD.
But you can also do PhDs in political science. So
you can. Then you get to study Facebook the comment sections all day.
Yeah.
Is there some specific academic tool that you would not be able to live without, that you are using every day?
Google Scholar.
Yeah, Google Scholar. Yeah.
The library, I guess. Yeah, place where you can. Well, a couple of tips I can give is that maybe it would be good to do in the master's already, if you're interested in doing a PhD, is to what I have is a literature list in Excel, where I categorize all my papers into different areas. So I have one on organizational design, one on high-skilled freelancers, one on gig economy platforms, so more for Uber drivers and TaskRabbit and stuff like that. And then I have columns for the name of the paper, the author, the journal, the methods, keywords, and one very important column where I write what the main argument in the paper is. So a short paragraph where I try to, in my own words, say what the paper is about. That helps a lot, especially when I'm theorizing. I can go back and check, okay, if I'm struggling with framing my paper in a certain way, I can go back and check my literature review or overview in that way, and get some inspiration or cite a paper. It also helps you to remember what the papers are about and how they kind of connect together and can contribute to your ideas.
Yeah, that's a very good idea. I think for many on bachelor's level, you don't really get to experience a lot of papers, right? Like I think I went back to some of my bachelor's photos, and it was mostly like just textbooks. But once you get to masters, it gets really overwhelming with all of the academic papers. So if you can keep a track of them, at least some basic ideas and maybe some screenshots, like it helps a huge down the road. And I'm speaking from experience. It's just my life got so much easier once I actually categorized everything in the literature lists, and it's just so easy to find citations and find the figures and all of those things that for someone might sound right now so abstract because they're not even on bachelor's yet. But if you get to masters, then watch this again, and it will be very relevant for you. So maybe just some quick questions, like what referencing software are you using to keep track of your references?
So I use software called EndNote because it's sort of the official software, but there's some great free ones out there. I think you might have to pay for EndNote, but I think Zotero is still free, and it's very good. I like Zotero a lot, but I don't use it because a lot of my co-authors and colleagues use EndNote. But Zotero is open source, which is great. They don't lock you in. And there's one called Mendeley, which is also quite good and well known in academia.
Who is currently helping you with your PhD, and how did you meet them?
I have two supervisors, one main supervisor who is sort of the main responsible for my PhD and all of my problems with it. And then I have a second supervisor, which is sort of the backup sparring partner that I can go and discuss ideas with and ask them to introduce me to other scholars, or if they have ideas for where I should go on exchange. So you also have to do an exchange semester as a PhD student. They were assigned to me, so I didn't actually know either of them before starting. But I'm very happy that they were assigned to me because my main supervisor is the coolest person, I think, at the department.
Okay.
Hopefully she sees this. And then, of course, a lot of others at the department are helping me, teachers that I've had before, started from my master's, who helped me with the proposal draft. It's a very collaborative workplace. So people help you a lot. And academia in general is highly driven by collaboration. So people help you, and you also have to be helpful. It's not hard to socialize in the department once you join. Even as a research assistant before doing your PhD, you just have to talk to people. They're very friendly and willing to talk, especially to young scholars and PhDs.
Everyone is pushing towards the same goal, like get as much knowledge out there as possible. So what are going to be your next steps after you finish your PhD? Have you given a thought about that? What is it going to be that you're going to be doing afterwards?
Well, I think I'm in the process of deciding now, so I can't say for sure. But ask me in 6 months, maybe I'll know.
We'll follow up on this in 6 months. Well, Jonathan, thanks a lot for your time. Thanks a lot for this interview.
Yeah, it was nice joining. Thanks for the opportunity. And good luck to anyone out there who's interested in applying for a PhD.
Yeah. I hope we have answered some of the questions that people had. And in case not, then put them in the comments down below, and I'll make sure to forward some of them to Jonathan if it's going to be relevant for him. as you heard, Jonathan is looking for a research assistant. So if you know how to code in R, and if you like databases and machine learning, then you know who to approach. I'm going to leave a contact on him if you write us an email or message. And yeah, thanks a lot for your time. And hopefully, maybe at some other day, we can discuss some different topics.
Yes. Thanks, Michael. Speak soon. Have a nice day.
Thank you for watching the interview. If you found this interesting, insightful, and full of information, then make sure to head over our website, studentsvalguide.dk, where you can find more information about studying in Denmark. If you want to ask some questions specific about this episode, then make sure to head over to forum.studentsvalguide.dk, where you can find a thread for this very specific episode. Otherwise, you can just use the comment section down below, but we would much rather for you to go onto our website and interact there. If you have any more questions, then again, make sure to use the forum function and follow us on our social media, because we are putting things like this out all the time and you don't want to miss them. Thank you and have a great day.